off at number 10, Ghost of Stowe Lake. San Francisco's Golden Gate Park is home to one of the city's most famous ghosts. Stowe Lake is said to be haunted by the spirit of a woman who, after attempting to save her child, who fell in the water, drowned in the lake. Legend says that this woman, referred to as the White Lady, wanders the edges of Stowe Lake as she searches for her child. She can even be summoned by visitors. It's said that the most active area surrounding the lake is near the Pioneer Woman and Children's statue. Ghost seekers can summon the woman by calling out, White Lady, I have your baby," 3 times. If she believes you, the woman will appear before you and will ask for her baby back. The legend bewars both skeptics and believers from doing this, because if you tell her you have her baby, the woman will haunt you for the rest of your life. If you tell the woman you don't have her baby after summoning her, legend says she will drag you into Stowe Lake and you will suffer the same fate she did in the lake. Now at number 9, the Dark Watchers. This legend takes place in the Santa Lucia Mountains, which run from Avila Beach to Monterey. The Dark Watchers are said to be giant phantoms that resemble humans and lurk inside the mountain. Legend goes that the Dark Watchers can only be seen at midnight, as they stand at the mountain's tops. They've only been claimed to be seen staring out into the wide space below the mountains, before completely vanishing into thin air. Coming in at number 8, Monster of Elizabeth Lake. Elizabeth Lake in California is said to have an evil presence below the water's surface. Elizabeth Lake is just outside Lancaster in LA. It's said to have been created by the devil himself to keep his hellish pets. The urban legend says that the passageway to hell can be found if you swim deep into the lake. The first sighting of the monster of Elizabeth Lake dates back to 1880. The monster is said to have the neck of a giraffe, head of a bulldog, bat wings, estimated to be about 50 feet long, and smells of decay. Sightings of the monster of Elizabeth Lake continue to be reported and strike fear in the locals. Here at number 7, the hauntings of Turnbull Canyon. In the Puente Hills Preserve near Witter Turnbull Canyon is a popular hiking site in the preserve. It was previously referred to as Harakanuga, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, which translates to the place of the devil. According to the legend, the region is haunted by the Indians who were executed for not converting to Catholicism. Their spirits are believed to be lingering inside the depths of the canyon, waiting to get out. Many years later, Turnbull became the site of numerous satanic rituals held by people who mysteriously disappeared. What was left behind from the rituals were paranormal sightings and occurrences, reported by both locals and freaked out hikers. Taking number 6, the Billywhack Monster. Rumors of an alleged beast have been going on around since the 1940s at the site of the former Billywhack Dairy in Ventura County. August Rubel, a German national living in the United States during World War II, owned the dairy. It was rumored that August had a secret underground lab beneath the dairy, where he was working with the US government to build a super soldier for war. He returned to Germany in 1943 as he was supposedly working for the Allies. During the trip, August allegedly stepped on a German landmine and passed away. Years later, reports of a strange creature roaming the area where the now abandoned dairy stood started to surface. Many of these reports came from local high school students who told police that a large humanoid with goat-like horns and sharp claws was hurling rocks at their car. Halfway at number 5, Alcatraz Demon. San Francisco's Alcatraz Island has plenty of ghosts and disturbing rumors about its former inmates, one of which is the Alcatraz Demon. The story is that a prisoner was ranting about a demon in his cell. The guards ignored his cries, knowing that many of the prisoners were mentally ill and prone to seeing things. The next morning, the prisoner was found strangled in his cell, with no evidence or means that someone else had been in or out of the cell. There were also a lot of other ghost stories surrounding Alcatraz. Here at number 4, the Hollywood Sign Spirit. This is probably one of the most infamous urban legends in California. The Hollywood sign is said to be haunted by the early 1900s actress Peg Entwistle. When a possible career-ending review was published about one of her films, Peg climbed to the top of the sign's H and jumped off of it. She is said to haunt the sign and the surrounding area. The legend continues to state that she will appear to people hiking to the off-limits part of the sign where she had taken her life. Instead of the sweet Hollywood actress, what appears to these unfortunate people is a woman with a skeletal face and deep hollowed-out eyes. If those hikers are alone, she is said to somehow influence them to share her same fate. Now at number 3, Ghost Hills. Basic laws of gravity state that what goes up must come down. While in California, there are spots that are rumored to defy this basic truth. If you park at the base of a hill in a specified location and release your parking brake, your car will roll uphill. These spots are hard to find but are often accompanied by a legend as its explanation. A school bus broke down and the kids jumped out to push it up the hill, but lost control and the bus ran over them, taking their lives. Now they push cars up hills as ghosts. Here at number 2, Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer is a serial killer who operated in Northern California in late 1960s. The Zodiac Killer took the lives of 5 known victims in the San Francisco Bay Area between December 1968 and October 1969, operating in rural, urban, and suburban settings. 2 of his attempted victims fortunately did survive. The Zodiac himself, however, claimed to have taken the lives of 37 victims, and he has been linked to several other cold cases, some in Southern California or outside the state. The Zodiac made the name for himself in a series of taunting letters and cards that he mailed to regional newspapers, threatening execution sprees and bombings if they were not printed. Some of the letters included cryptograms or ciphers, in which the Zodiac claimed that he was collecting his victims as slaves for the afterlife. Of the 4 ciphers he produced, 2 remain unsolved, and only 1 was cracked in 2020. The Zodiac stopped written communications around 1974. The unusual nature of this case led to the international interest that is sustained throughout the years. The case also still remains open in the city of Vallejo, as well as in Napa County and Solano County. The California Department of Justice has maintained an open case file on the Zodiac since 1969. Although in late 2021, a team of specialists who investigate cold cases say they identified the Zodiac Killer as Gary Francis Post, who passed away in 2018. The team's years of digging uncovered new forensic evidence and photos from his darkroom. One image features a scar on the forehead of Gary's that matches a scar on the sketch of the Zodiac. It's insane that he stopped communication in 1974 and passed away in 2018, but they only identified him last year. Coming in at number 1, the Charman. The Charman's origin story is quite gruesome. A father and son were both caught in a house fire and horribly burnt in 1948. After the fire, the son became so mentally unstable that he executed his father. When the police found the son, he was so unrecognizably burnt, they didn't realize he was alive. So he ran away before they were able to arrest him for what he did to his father. The story goes that ever since then, the Charman can be spotted wandering the woods surrounding Ojai, occasionally approaching tents of innocent campers or pretending to be a hitchhiker and then attempting to attack them.
Coming in at number 10, we have 13 Curves. This is a very dangerous road in Marcellus, New York, named the 13 Curves. Over the past 60 years since its construction, this road claimed the lives of many drivers from unfortunate accidents. None are more notorious than the story of a couple on their wedding day. Drivers claim they see a young woman dressed in a bloody white wedding gown walking along the road looking for her groom. All of the accidents on this road are said to be associated with this one woman, since many of the survivors of these accidents claim that the last thing they saw before crashing was in fact this woman in white. This story is very similar to La Llorona if you guys remember my past videos. That is in the Texas video. How the woman passed away in the first place remains a complete mystery, but some claim that on their wedding night the couple drove on these winding roads, but on one of the curves they lost control and ended up in a nearby creek, with both of them passing away. Other drivers claim that they enter into their cars and many of them become startled and crash when they look in their rearview mirror to see this bloody apparition. At a number 9 spot, we have the Fordham University Spirit Story. Before we begin, scenes from The Exorcist were shot here, so it was probably for good reason since they wanted to shoot a horror film at this university filled with the supernatural. In the summer of 2003, RAs in the place noticed that in one room the beds were propped up rather than lying on the floor. It wasn't until one day an RA awoke from knocking on his door. When he opened it, he saw a Jesuit priest who said he would take care of the mattresses. Except when the RA tried to figure out who the priest was, he discovered that the only Jesuit priest bearing that description had passed away 10 years ago. That's not all the ghosts within this university. It's said that the spirit of a little girl who has been seen in the bathrooms is said to lurk and peek behind the shower curtains. Many other students revealed that they had sleep paralysis when inside the dorms, even though they had no such thing prior. Lastly, other students report being woken up due to the feeling of someone grabbing their neck and tugging their legs as if someone wants to drag them. At a number 8 spot, we have Rochester's White Lady. There's a white lady scary urban legend in almost all cultures, so I had to mention one in New York as well. In Eastman Durham Park, visitors claim to see a crying woman asking where her daughter is. The story goes that in the early 1800s, a woman named Elisa lived in the area with her farmer husband. After a seemingly good start to their new home in Rochester, tragedy struck when Elisa's daughter suddenly disappeared. The story story of her disappearance varies, but the most popular one is that the daughter asked Elisa if she can walk to the lake, but she never ended up returning. Regardless of what version you believe, the result is the same. People see the white lady roam the perimeters of the lake, constantly wailing and asking for the location of her daughter. People claim that she is more aggressive towards men, but appears as more heartfelt and sorrowful for women. This could be because women are more likely to assist her in finding her daughter, but much of it is unknown. At our number 7 spot, we have the White Horse Tavern. This tavern was established all the way back in 1673, making it America's oldest tavern, as you can see from the sign in the front of the building. During the 18th century, the owner of the bar was reported to be a pirate and rum smuggler, and when the British authorities were hunting for him, he hid out in this tavern during the Revolutionary War and brought in many other soldiers with him, where a lot of them would pass away in that tavern. The most activity in the tavern is said to be located on the 2nd floor in the master bedroom. Story goes that a young girl passed away from smallpox in that room, and many guests hear the little girl singing, and some workers claim they see a little girl running around with a lemon and lime knife looking to attack unsuspecting victims. And remember that pirate owner I mentioned? Yeah, he would end up murdering someone in that very room, but that's all up for speculation still. Regardless, the world's oldest tavern had to have a few of their own ghost stories. At our number 6 spot, we have the Rolling Hills Asylum. Located in East Bethany, New York, this asylum was originally named the Genesee County Poor Farm. A poorhouse is a place where orphan children, families, the elderly, and where physically and mentally handicapped people go. All the people who passed away at the asylum were buried on the property grounds, which led many people to believe to be haunted throughout the entire area. The favorite entity spotted there is called Roy Crouse. The owner had an encounter with Roy the ghost. One day she went in and a rat went across the room. The rat startled her and then she went to scream and then left the asylum. The next day when she came back, she noticed a rat that startled her was found dead on the stairs with blood oozing out of it. Above that was a bloody handprint, presumably with the blood of the rat. She believes it was Roy helping her, as the rat scared her pretty bad. Right in the hump of our list, we have the Curse of 1940. The Curse of 1940, or the Dutton's Curse, was a hex that was believed to cause NHL's New York Rangers not to win a Stanley Cup between 1941 all up until 1993. For all you non-hockey fans, the New York Rangers were very successful in their early years when they took 3 Stanley Cups, 1928, 1933, and 1940. After a 54-year wait, they won another Stanley Cup in 1994, but many fans believe the reason they haven't touched gold in so long is because of this curse. This was because in the 1939-40 season, the mortgage of the Madison Square Garden, which is the place where the Rangers played, was paid off, which led to management to burn the entire mortgage in the bowl of the cup. This led many to believe that the hockey gods put a curse on them. For example, in the 1950 Stanley Cup Finals, the Rangers had to play in the Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto for their home ice, which could be related to the fact that the MSG burned their mortgage, forcing them to play in another city, hence why they didn't win that year. I know sports curses are not scary at all, but for New York Rangers fans, this is the most terrifying thing they heard all year. At our number 4 spot, we have Palmyra Historical Museum. As the name suggests, this museum is located in Palmyra, New York. This building is thought to be over 200 years old and once served as a tavern and a hotel. It is now open to the public as a museum, but there's a reason why this one is on the list. The story goes that 6 days before Christmas 1964, a fire raged a small home which had Ruth Anna Breeden, her husband Paul, and 6 children inside. It was a supposed flash fire which engulfed the entire house quickly. The husband managed to escape, but the mother and her 6 children were found burnt in the basement underneath a mattress. Although the fire didn't happen in the museum per se, it sits on the home's foundation, meaning the basement is the exact same. This is why many guests claim to catch the scent of ash in the basement, because this is where the woman and her children lost their life. In the museum, guests also report toys being flown off shelves and even feeling their hair and clothes being tugged on. All the way at our number 3 spot, we have Vale Cemetery. After being opened in 1857, the historic Vale Cemetery became the largest cemetery in Schenectady, New York. After many years, guests will report some pretty eerie paranormal activity going on inside the cemetery. Many people had come forward, all reporting the same phenomenon, saying that the statues would bleed from their eyes. It's very important to note that all the people that came forward were not related in any sort of way, making all these accounts really genuine. Other people visiting the cemetery also claim that they've seen figures sitting in the trees above the tombstones and even full-blown apparitions of crying ghosts. The cemetery now has a total of 33,000 assigned plots, making it a spiritual hub. At our number 2 spot, we have the ghost ship of the Hudson River. Back when New York was just a small village, reports surfaced of a spooky ship floating on the river. Seen at dusk on foggy days, many say it was the spirit of the Henry Hudson's Half Moon ship. One of the reports came from an anonymous source of the weather dork that they referred to as Samuel. He was spending the day fishing on the shore of the Hudson, but then an odd ship caught his gaze. He claimed the ship was floating on air above the water, but as the ship got closer to him, he found that it had no crew on deck and had 3 empty masts. Regardless of the fact that it was floating, the ship could only be heard when it got closer, and the wood would be creaking as if it was on water when it wasn't. Eventually, a storm came and slowly brought the ship back into the river, slowly disappearing into the darkness and the rain. If you listen to this story and get some Flying Dutchman vibes, you're right. All the way at our number 1 spot, we have the Amityville Horror House. It all started with an invitation from a news anchorman in Long Island. All the Warrens knew that there was a tragedy inside of the home, and the owners left after only living at the home for little less than a month. After Ed Warren spoke to the owner of the home, George Lutz, he quickly agreed to have them investigate. George was so horrified by the house that he only left the keys to the house and completely left the area. When the Warrens were in the house, they described feeling a powerful negative energy, calling it, quote, diabolically infested. Ed then entered the basement and felt immediate pressure, which pinned him on the floor. He commanded to Jesus Christ to leave, and it lifted it off of him. This was no regular paranormal case. The Warrens were unaware that 6 people were murdered in that home 7 months ago, where Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered his entire family in that one night. Coming in at our number 10 spot, we have the 13 Steps to Hell. Built in 1901, the Maltby Cemetery in Woodinville, Washington is said to be one of the go-to cemeteries if you want to experience some sort of supernatural activity. The most famous legend about the cemetery is the story of the 13 Steps to Hell. And I know how that sounds. The stairs appeared to lead nowhere and descended into the ground as they are located in the center of a cemetery. They allegedly led to an underground family tomb. Even though you were only a few feet away, it was said that when you went down the stairs, you abruptly lost your ability to hear anything above you. It is said that if you turn around and face the bottom of the stairs, you could catch a glimpse of hell itself. Local lore claims that occasionally people would descend down these stairs and just never come back. Even though the steps were removed many years ago, there are still stories concerning them. At number 9 spot, we have the Caddy of Cadborough Bay. Wait, did you think we could escape the Loch Ness Monster? Cause we really can't. There's one in every single state, and for Washington, they have the Cadborosaurus, nicknamed the Caddy. It is said to be a 20-foot long serpent creature that inhabits the northern part of the West Coast. It's described as having the head of a horse and the body of a very large eel. Eyewitnesses reports have been coming in for the past 200 years with 300 different sightings. Even the Inuit people drew this creature on their canoes in hopes they would ward it off once they entered into the water. As with all these Loch Ness Monster hypes, many people claim to have found and captured it, but eventually it gets to the point when you can't even tell what's real and what's fake. At number 8 spot, we're the Black Cat of Stevens Hall. Built in 1895 in Pullman, Washington, the Stevens Hall was once praised as the, quote, most famous attractive building on the campus. But once people stepped foot inside, they took back these claims. Kind of like when you meet someone who is physically attractive but has a terrible personality. This is that place. It started as a hangout spot for students at Washington State University, and here they would dance, drink, and tell stories to one another. One famous story told at the hall was Edgar Allan Poe's The Black Cat. It was read on Halloween every single year until one year the students believed the story had come to life. Eventually, many would see sightings of a black cat inside of the Stevens Hall. Then on one Halloween, the black cat stood in front of the house's mother's door, and when the students opened the door to see what the black cat was hiding, they found that a girl had passed away, and many believed it was caused by this black cat. At a number 7 spot, we have the Iron Goat Trail. In 1893, a railroad was constructed across the Cascades of Washington. This would be great news because it would finally mean that Seattle would be connected with the Midwest and many other states. Except once trains started to use this railroad, they ran into many problems. To begin with, trains with engines on each end had to struggle up switchbacks to reach the summit. And the worst part about this place was that since it was in the mountains, snow could reach up to 25 feet high in some places, which would have hundreds of people digging out the snow in order for the train to go through. Then in February 1920, the deadliest avalanche in American history hit the railroad. It derailed trails and killing a total of 96 people in the process. And at the time, the rescue mission was nearly impossible due to the extreme weather conditions present on the mountain. Now many hikers come across the area where the accident occurred, and many find themselves leaving immediately the moment they get there. This is because some hikers have reported hearing noticeable screams coming from the tunnels, while others have spotted the apparitions of men screaming for help. All of these components make this place one of Washington State's most haunted places. At number 6 spot, we have Port Townsend, Washington. Considered to be one of America's most haunted cities, Port Townsend definitely has a dark history to back up that claim. The thing about this place is that paranormal activity isn't in a single building or two, but they say that the spirits roam freely around the town, and there's not a place in town where you won't have the chance to see a ghost. For example, the Manresa Castle located in the city was once visited by ghost adventurers, and they supposedly captured children's laughter on film, as well as feeling as though something or someone was pressing against them the whole time. Then we have the Palace Hotel, which used to be known as the Palace of Suites due to the woman who used to live there. But many visitors claim these women never left. They say a woman in blue exposes herself to guests and staff members while the other spirits try to play pranks on the other people. In the hump of our list, we have the Maury Island incident. Weeks before the infamous Roswell accident, Red Chrisman and Harold Dahl had their own encounter that shocked many people at the time. It all started on June 24, 1947, when pilot Kenneth Arnold claimed to see a string of 9 shiny unidentified flying objects traveling around 1,200 miles per hour near Mount Rainier. Many people have said they have seen the UFOs flying as well. Eventually, the story would be relayed to Red Chrisman and Harold Dahl, who both claimed to have fragments from the supposed UFO. When they interviewed Harold, he would go on to say, quote, "On June 21st, 1947, in the afternoon around 2 o'clock, I was patrolling the east bay of Maury Island. I, as captain, was steering my patrol boat close to the shore of the bay of Maury Island. On board were 2 crewmen, my 50-year-old son, and his dog. As I looked up from the wheel of my boat, I noticed 6 very large donut-shaped aircraft." Eventually, the FBI started to investigate and stated this incident was a hoax. But who knows? This really wouldn't be the last time the US government was hiding UFOs. At number 4, we have the infamous Bigfoot. Yes, the hairy creature had to make its way onto this list simply because this is the state where it was first documented and popularized. To this day, this is the state where the most sightings are recorded, so it's either everyone is lying in Washington or they may actually have a Bigfoot in their woods. Bigfoot has gained worldwide attention, but for those who don't know, they're basically 7 to 8 feet tall hairy humanoids with extreme strength. To this day, the search for Bigfoot is still a mystery, and there hasn't been solid evidence to prove the general public that these beasts actually exist. But hey, if you live in Washington, you have the best chance of actually discovering one, but that outcome would probably be a lot more different than you would think. At number 3 spot, we have Tacoma Old City Hall. Serving as City Hall in the early 20th century, this 10-story clock tower is haunted by a single prankster ghost named Gus. Many don't know the origins of this ghost, but it was said that he may have been a former criminal that was held in the building's old city jail and even passed away there. So as I mentioned, this building served as City Hall until 1957. This was a time when the City Hall was being neglected, no maintenance, and no payments. So eventually the building was too unsafe to work in, causing everyone to be kicked out. Nowadays, visitors of the old City Hall claim that prankster ghosts have taken over the entire building. For example, Gus is known to toss objects in the air at random. He's also known to turn on lights on and off, and sometimes he would completely shatter light bulbs. At one point, the sightings were so frequent, the police believed it was a person trespassing the property. But after further investigation, it was discovered that no one was trespassing the property. At number 2 spot, we have the Kells Irish Pub. Considered to be a family-friendly bar/restaurant, the Kells Irish Restaurant and Pub is said to be one of the most haunted eateries in the entire nation. To start, the pub is located in the Butterworth building, which was a former mortuary. So you kind of know where this story is going. This would basically mean that the entire building was used to store deceased bodies. Throughout the years, many spirituals have been brought to the Butterworth building in an attempt to initiate meaningful communication with the alleged spirits who remain there, including both a Catholic priest and a voodoo priestess. Nowadays, visitors report sightings of a ghost of a young girl dressed in a scarlet velvet dress. Others have spotted the ghost of an older man named Charlie, who would appear at random throughout the entire building. At number 1 spot, we have Mount Baker Theater. Opening up in 1927, the Mount Baker Theater in Bellingham was haunted from day one. Unidentified sounds, chilly spots, strange disembodied voices, balls of light, and even the odd apparition are just a few of the stories that have been noted here. As well, many visitors have reported the ghost of a young woman named Judy. It's said that she has crushes on male visitors and will choose to usher them into their seats if she does have a crush on them. People know it's Judy when they begin to hear their name across the floor and feel as though someone is touching them on the back or their shoulders. Another spirit trapped in this place is a cat that is found in the basement of the theater. Many claim that whenever they go to the basement and they catch a glimpse of this cat, something bad is bound to happen, as with many other black cat theories. Oddly enough, Mount Baker Theater keeps a ghost light on stage during the off hours, claiming that they ward off the evil ones from the theater, but who really knows if it works like they say they do. At a number 10 spot, we have the Night Marchers. According to Hawaiian lore, the Night Marchers were an ancient Hawaiian warriors in their past life, but their spirits march the island carrying torches now. But don't worry about hiding from them, because you'll definitely hear hear them well before you see them, as they play a distinctly loud drum while they march. They are believed to be stuck on the island for many different reasons. Some of the claims are they are looking to reclaim rightful territory or avenge a battle they had previously lost. These spirits are not entirely evil, but they do demand respect. For example, if you are unfortunate enough to cross paths with them, try your best not to interrupt. And I'll stress you not to look into their eyes, as you will meet your doom from even one glance from these warriors. Since they are ghosts, nothing can stop them from their path, not even buildings. So when you see them, do exactly this. Or another option is to lie down on the floor, but wouldn't you think that walking away is a better option? No? Anyone? At our number 9 spot, we have Morgan's Corner. This one takes place in the island of Oahu and is one of the most grisly murders on this list. Morgan's Corner got its name from a doctor who happened to live at this particular bend of the road. Then in 1948, it claimed that a couple of prisoners escaped the local prison and broke into a house looking for any sort of supplies. They broke into the home of 68-year-old Therese Wilder, who was below the home of Dr. James Morgan. They gagged her and later took her life by means of suffocation. Even though both of these criminals were caught and sent to jail, many say her screams for help can still be heard to this day. At our number 8 spot, we have Pele, or the goddess of volcanoes, or she goes by another name called the woman who devours land, but I think that's a little bit too aggressive. It's said in Hawaii that every time a volcano erupts, it resembles Pele's longing to be with her true love. Her story varies, but the most popular rendition talks about a girl born in Tahiti who was sent away from her father because of her difficult temper and seducing her sister's husband. After leaving, she would encounter her sister once again, who took her life out of pure rage. This is when Pele became a full-fledged god before finding her home on a Hawaii island. Now it's said that if you remove the lava rocks on her island home, you will suffer years and years of bad luck and misfortune. And to this day, thousands of lava rocks are sent back to Hawaii due to people experiencing said bad luck. At number 7 spot, we have the Green Lady of Wahiawa. According to Hawaiian lore, a lady and her child would go to this botanical gardens often. Instead of taking their usual route on the bridge to go home, they decided to take the gulch because she feared of her children being struck by a car, since there was a fair amount of cars on the road at the time. When they took the gulch at night, the complex terrain separated the two, and the woman would end up losing her daughter. She looked everywhere in the ravine, but as nothing popped up, she went to the townsfolk for assistance, but no one wanted to help as it was very late at night. As she went back to look down once again, she ended up going missing as well. Now it's believed that she still roams the gulch covered in moss and vines with a distinct decaying smell, which is the reason why she is considered the Green Lady. She supposedly snatches children she finds in the area to fill the void she had from losing her daughter. And she's also spotted at the local elementary school acting as a mother picking up her own child. At our number 6 spot, we have the Koniana Cave. The Koniana Cave is located at the base of a cliff along the Farrington Highway of Oahu. The cave formed over 150,000 years ago. According to Hawaiian legend, Koniana Cave is home to the underground shark god Nanaue, the son of Komahoali, or the king of sharks, the most sacred brother of the fire goddess Pele. Nanaue was born with a mouth on his back and his mother never fed him meat, but when he was 7 he accidentally ate one and slowly would become this shark-like humanoid with razor-sharp teeth and gills. He had an appetite for human flesh after that and would use his cave as a lair until one of the day a group of villagers came down and hunted him down for good. Now it's said that if you see an elderly Hawaiian man cooking meat near a cave, it's actually the spirit of Nanaue. In the hump of our list, we have the faceless ghost of Wale Drive-In Theater. Supposedly at the Wale Drive-In Theater, there is a faceless ghost of a woman who stands near the lady's bathroom combing her hair. When you get too close to her, she will toss her hair to the side to reveal her perfectly featureless face as smooth as polished stone. The drive-in is supposedly haunted by these ghosts because it was built to an old cemetery in Kahala, which has since been torn down and transformed into commercial and residential buildings. Reports of the faceless woman began on May 19, 1959, when the person who first spotted her was hospitalized after a mental breakdown. This would become big in local news and many would come to the theater in hopes to experience this tragedy. After, many women would be found unconscious on the restroom floor who were said to be approached by the faceless woman. At our number 4 spot were the Menehune. These Hawaiian mythical beings are said to be located deep within the forest of the island. These 3 foot tall beings are said to be experts at building, where legends say that they would build temples, fish ponds, roads, and even homes for the Hawaiians. According to lore, if you interrupt them when they are working, they will vanish out of thin air, but in some rare cases they come back to you with only negative intentions. A story goes that a group of teens went on a beach to have a bonfire. When they arrived, they noticed an odd looking shrine, but as they focused more on it, they noticed these little faces and shadows of little people in the forest behind it. Scared by this, the teens decided to find offerings to give to the shrine. One teen came out of the forest with an apple, running, after a group of menehuane started to circle him. All the teens managed to escape, but this incident remains a reminder not to mess with these beings. All the way at a number 3 spot, we have the Ilonani Palace. From scary sounds to unexplained apparitions, Inulawi Palace reigns high with paranormal activity. Built in 1882, the meticulously restored palace was once home to Hawaii's last ruling royalty, King Kalakaua, and his sister Queen Lilikuali. She was imprisoned in the palace within her bedroom for 8 months following the overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy. Although the queen physically passed away in 1917, it's believed that her spirit, along with a few others, are still roaming the halls of the royal home. Visitors on tours and security guards on duty have reported hearing footsteps, smelling the scent of burning cigars, and seeing the silhouette of a woman standing in the window of what was once the queen's bedroom. At number 2 spot, we have the Daniel K. Inouye International Airport. This international airport, located in Honolulu, is considered one of the most haunted airports in all of America, and for good reason. The airport is said to be haunted by the Lady in Waiting, who is a blonde girl who wears a white dress and appears in areas where people aren't allowed. The story goes that a woman fell for a man who pledged to marry her, but at a random turn of events, he took back his promise and vanished out of thin air. After she suspected the man left on a flight, she went to that airport and took her own life in one of the bathrooms. Now it's said that her spirit still remains in the airport, but is more prevalent in the bathrooms, with reports of her slamming the toilet seats and tugging on people's clothes. At the airport is said another ghost who is known for choking guests. It's said that this ghost sits on the chest of others and gives them the sensation of choking. Guess I'm taking a boat on my next Hawaii trip. At a number 1 spot, we have the ghost of Pearl Harbor. The Pearl Harbor incident was known as the reason for America's entry into World War II. This happened on December 7, 1941, when the Japanese led an attack to destroy as many military and civilian vessels in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. This attack caused the casualties of around 2,400 US personnel, including 68 civilians, and damaged or destroyed 19 US Navy ships, including 8 battleships. It's said that the spirits of those who passed still remain on Pearl Harbor to this day. One of the ghosts that can be spotted on the grounds is the ghost of a man named Charlie. When heavy doors begin to swing back and forth, or lights being flickered on and off, everyone who works there just says, quote, "That's just Charlie," as if it was some casual thing or something. Don't know about you, but I would expect everyone who passed away from this attack to become malevolent ghosts in the future, but I guess this one just got tired of it all. As people approach the shrine built to commemorate the event, many claim to feel the instant feeling of sadness and a pain feeling. At number 10 spot, we have the Haunted Igloo Hotel. Located in Canwa, Alaska, is one of the most unique hotels you'll ever see. However, can we call it a hotel if it's never officially been opened up to people? I guess not. Well, sometime in the 1970s, a man named Leon Smith began the construction of this building. His original plan was to make it a never-before-seen hotel, but over the years, it never managed to open due to various code violations. For example, they had undersized windows, which didn't even meet the requirement of the state. And in the end, the building was too big to demolish, so it just stood there for the next 4 decades. Now, apart from this hotel looking pretty eerie, what makes it so scary? Well, because this is an area notorious for grizzly bear attacks, and many have been reported in the area surrounding the hotel. But what makes many stray far, far away is that some have said they saw a woman in white who haunts the ruins. She can be seen looking out of the windows and sometimes by the entrance. At a number 9 spot with the Baggage Towers. Before you arrive in Whittier, Alaska, you must go through a long, narrow tunnel, and when you get out, the place already has this creepy atmosphere. However, as you drive down this town, one building may stand out to you, and that's the Baggage Towers. At one point, this building held the entire population of the city, all while being used for other public facilities such as stores and even churches. They eventually gave it the nickname, the town under one roof, and it just makes sense. With everyone in the town being under the same roof, it was bound to happen that some restless spirits stayed in the building as well. And at one point, residents of the building reported a strange, dark, shadowy figure walking and even crawling around the hallways late at night. In the rooms, they would hear strange voices coming from dark places telling them just to come closer. And one notorious spirit that most residents know is the man that could be heard whistling across the building. Now locals claim that it's even worse when snowfall hits because it just forces them to stay trapped inside of this supposed haunted building. At number 8 spot, we have Badarka Road. Many say this road exists while others claim it was completely made up, but what could be true is the terrifying stories attached to this road. Apparently located in Chujik is a road known to be haunted by a man and his young daughter. This is all because they lost their lives on this road and have never been put to rest. Story goes that a man and his 5-year-old daughter decided to drive down this stretch of road in order to gather firewood for their cabin that was nearby. When they stopped, the father grabbed his axe and proceeded to chop down a tree. When he was on to his next tree, he wanted a small break, so he kept his axe lodged into the tree. However, when he turned his back, his daughter wanted to impress him and she took out the axe, which caused the entire tree to fall on top of her, killing her instantly. The father was so distraught and just sat there with her lifeless body until he passed away from hypothermia. Now if you happen to find this road and drive down it around 3 AM, you may catch the father holding his bloody daughter asking for a ride. At number 7 spot, we have Chased by a UFO. On November 17th, 1986, Japan Airlines cargo flight 1628 was making a trip from Paris all the way to Narita, which is really close by to Tokyo, Japan. It was a pretty normal flight until they made it over eastern Alaska. This is when the crew began to spot 2 unidentified flying objects close by to their left side. They described the aircrafts having 2 rectangular arrays, which is probably their thrusters. And when these aircrafts got too close, the pilots of the Japan flight noted that they could feel the heat on their face. One of the aircrafts appeared to be twice the size of the cargo flight, and they said it kind of looked like a mothership of some sort. The pilots tried to do evasive maneuvers in order to avoid these UFOs, but they still continued their pursuit for little under an hour. Once the 2 aircrafts left the plane alone, a third one came out of nowhere and began to trail them. The pilots decided to contact air traffic control to identify the aircraft, but nothing could be distinguished. After the end of the 3-month investigation, they concluded that there wasn't enough material for proof, although they'd accepted the descriptions that the crew had left them. So this still remains unsolved, but who knows what the crew actually saw. At number 6 spot, we have Scary Mary. One of the most famous legends told to many Alaskans is the story of Scary Mary. The story begins in the height of the Klondike Gold Rush, which occurred between 1896 to 1899. One day, a young beautiful woman named Mary came to the Golden North Hotel in Skagway with her fiance. They loved each other, and by the first day in the hotel, they had already made plans to marry one another. So the fiance decided to go off and get a fortune in the gold fields. However, as time went by, the man never ended up returning. Throughout this whole time, Mary was patiently waiting for his arrival back at the hotel. But at one point, she decided to lock herself in the room, knowing her fiance was probably never going to return. After another week, the hotel keepers decided to break down her door, only to find her deceased body while wearing a wedding dress that was meant for her wedding day. Now visitors tell us that she hasn't ever checked out at the hotel. People walking outside claim to see a pale figure wearing a wedding dress looking outside of the windows, while others claim to see her on the ceilings looking down at them when they're sleeping. In the hump of our list, we have the Eldred Rock Lighthouse. Right off of Alaska's coastline is a small island notorious for the disasters that happened around it. This is the Eldred Rock Lighthouse in Haines Area, Alaska. The lighthouse stood strong for over 100 years, but it has been haunted ever since its construction. During the 1896 gold rush, many steamboats were bringing gold miners across the body of water that surrounds the lighthouse, and unfortunately, many of these ships didn't survive the journey. The most famous wreck was during February 1898, when the steamship named the Clara Nevada hit the rock with as many as 75 lives being lost. Ever since that disaster, the island has been haunted by the souls of the Clara Nevada. All the lighthouse keepers report the feeling of being watched when they go out on a nighttime walk, and some have even claimed to see shadowy figures peeking out of the water near the coastlines. At number 4 spot, we have University of Alaska Poltergeist. The University of Alaska's Wendy William Auditorium seems to be a notorious place on campus for having a few of their own poltergeists. One of these being John Wendell Wendy Williamson himself. He was a former music professor who used to teach at the school, and students and staff members nowadays claim his spirit still lives in the room, since a lot of overnight staff will catch music being played in the auditorium only to find out that no one is in the whole hall. Psychics and other paranormal investigators have gone to the auditorium and said there are 5 other entities inside. These include a shadowy man seen in the backstage, an aggressive man who picks on brunettes, a teenage guy who is very welcoming, and a white lady who used to be a former student, and alongside a little girl that can be heard giggling during the lectures. Just imagine, you pay thousands of dollars to go to school only to be haunted by a family of ghosts. At number 3 spot, we have the Qualupalik. The legend of the Qualupalik comes from the Inuit people and their icy Arctic waters. They're actually somewhat considered mermaids, but unlike any other regular mermaid, there is nothing attractive about this creature. These creatures are often depicted as having fins that jut out of their heads, backs and arms, and their webbed feet and hands are topped with long sharp claws All of this is enough to strike terrors into the hearts of the children that the Qualiplik preys upon. Only these children will catch a glimpse of their face, which resembles a woman's face that has turned green and bloated from rotting and being under the sea for a long time. Those who have sighted this creature report that they can only be seen for an instant before they are completely gone, but the children victims of this creature would not be so lucky. Their ways of killing involve leaping out of the water, sinking their sharp claws into your flesh, and dragging you into the water to drown you. At number 2 spot, we have the Alaskan Triangle. We all know about Bermuda's Devil Triangle that consumes ships and planes alike, but Alaska has their very own as well. The triangle connects from Alaska's largest city of Anchorage to Juneau in the southeast and Barrow in the north. Similar to Bermuda's Triangle, over the past 50 years, over 20,000 people and several planes have gone missing in this area. The mystery of the disappearance is inconclusive, but many of the surrounding indigenous tribes claim that restless demons and trickster spirits lure people to an icy death. Some say there's even a shape-shifting demon called the Kushtaka that inhabits the forests of the Alaskan Triangle. He is described to approach those who are lost or weak, and once your trust grows with them, they will drag you deeper and deeper into the wilderness and tear you limb for limb, preventing your soul from ever reincarnating. In other words, there's not much to do here other than being lost and potentially encountering this bloodthirsty creature. All the way at our number 1 spot with the Iliamna Lake Monster. Lake Iliamna is located in a very remote region of southwest Alaska, and when I say remote, I mean it, because in order to get to this lake, you must either go by boat or one of those float planes. It also happens to be the largest lake in Alaska and the second largest in the entire US, so best believe this large body of water has more than a few creatures lurking its depths. Native stories speak about a large aquatic creature that has been the reason for many deaths around the area. Those who have seen the beast have said it ranges from 10 to 30 feet in length with a square-like head. It's so powerful, it's said that it attacks small boats off of blunt force alone, meaning it'll ram its head onto the boat until it completely destroys it. The natives call the creature a Gonagadet, which is depicted as a fish god, or some consider the monster to be a Jig-ik-nak, which are these fish-like monsters that travel in groups to attack canoes and even kill warriors.
Starting off this countdown at number 10, the Stanley Hotel. One of the most famous haunts of Colorado is the Stanley Hotel. The Stanley, which served as the basis for Stephen King's The Shining, is more than a century old and is home to countless ghost sightings and unexplainable events. Multiple witnesses have seen a face peering out of the window of room 407 when it was unoccupied. One witness staying in the room reported that a light kept turning off and on. Allegedly, the guests acknowledged the ghost, assured him that they'd only be staying 2 days, and asked him to keep the light on. The spirit left the light alone after that, but proceeded to spend the rest of the night noisily playing around with the elevator just outside the door. Rooms 217, 401, and 418 have unusually high reports of paranormal activity. Cleaning crews tell of strange noises and seeing impressions on the bed when the rooms were empty. Guests in room 418 report that the sounds of children playing in the hall, but when those reports came in, there were no children checked into the hotel. Number 9, the Black Forest Haunting. In the early 1990s, Steve Lee moved his family into a log cabin home in the Black Forest region of northern Colorado. They rented it for a year before purchasing it, but once the land was theirs, things started getting weird. Initially, lights and electronic devices kept turning off and on, and eerie noises sometimes filled the air. This was followed by a strange odor that wafted through the cabin that burned the family's throats and eyes. Thinking these happenings were the work of pranksters, the Lee family installed motion detectors and cameras. However, the motion detectors would go off when nothing seemed to be happening on the cameras. Steve Lee added more cameras capturing more unexplainable phenomenon like orbs, beams of light, and sometimes ghostly forms with faces. The Lees could no longer pretend the cameras were the problem, and they contacted the show Sightings to document what became one of the most famous hauntings in America. The Sightings crew experienced and captured quite a bit of phenomena themselves. Cameras were knocked off tripods, one of their producers experienced an attempted possession, and a medium working with them determined there were multiple spirits in the house and a rift in space and time on the property. Number 8, the Vampire's Grave. European lore is rich in tales of vampires, yet one of those creatures may have found themselves in a small town in Colorado. Theodore Glava was a Transylvanian immigrant who moved to Colorado and became a coal miner. Legend says the man was tall and pale with a dark coat and long fingernails. In 1918, he passed away of the flu and was buried in the local cemetery, where some say they have seen his figure lurking at night. Some say that the tree guarding Glava's grave grew from the stake that was hammered into his heart post-mortem. Number 7, Butch Cassidy's Lost Gold. Butch Cassidy was one of the most infamous outlaws in Wild West history, and his life allegedly ended in a shootout in 1908, but it said he left behind mementos of his acclaimed career. According to the rumors, Cassidy reportedly stashed thousands of dollars worth of gold in a hideout in an unassuming Irish canyon. If this is true, the gold may still be there to this day. Should you ever visit the Irish Canyon, keep a careful eye out and you may be the one to discover Cassidy's hidden treasure. Number 6. Route 666. The infamous Route 666, nicknamed the Devil's Highway, runs through Colorado. It was renumbered as Route 491 in 2003 in hopes of dispelling the fear surrounding the demonic numbers. However, changing the numbers didn't take away the unexplainable phenomena that occurred, and is still occurring on this cursed road. When it was still known as Route 666, this stretch of highway had an unusually high accident rate. People driving along the Devil's Highway have reported creepy incidences, such as a black Phantom sedan that follows dangerously close no matter how high the speed. Many have pulled over only to realize that there's no car behind them. There are also tales of a pack of hellhounds that terrorize innocent travelers. The beasts somehow manage to keep up with the vehicle regardless of how fast or recklessly the driver maneuvers the car. Many believe these hellhounds are responsible for shredding tires and causing terrible wrecks. Some have even claimed that the beasts are capable of jumping into the windows and mauling people. Halfway, number 5, the Riverdale Road. Riverdale Road runs through Thornton and is lined with creepy cottonwood trees, where you can allegedly see hanging bodies by the light of the full moon. A Camaro with no driver can also be spotted winding down this stretch of road. Riverdale Road also has its own Lady in White legend. Reportedly, visitors have seen this strange woman in their rearview mirror. Locals believe that she is a ghost who is looking for the spirits of her deceased children. Number 4, the Gates of Hell. According to local legend, the Gates of Hell lies near Riverdale Road in Thornton. Rumor has it that the stretch of road leads to rusted iron gates that open to a place of satanic worship and human sacrifices. Behind these gates also rest the charred ruins of an old mansion that leads directly to hell, people say. The mansion was built by David Woolpett during the gold rush. Over the years, the structure was used as a brothel, cowboy saloon, and a hippie commune before it was burned down in 1975. It's said that a man living in the mansion took his family's lives before setting the home on fire. This dark story has led people to believe that the grounds of the mansion are portals to the underworld. Number 3, the Hotel Colorado. The guests of the Hotel Colorado are often awoken in the night by strange sounds and flickering lights. Some are plagued by sightings of a little girl wearing a Victorian-era dress, while others recount how their personal items were moved around or missing. Both bell tower suites are reportedly haunted, and the elevator seems to have a mind of its own at times. Stories tell of a female presence that has a habit of watching male guests as they sleep. The screams of a woman can also often be heard throughout the hotel, believed to belong to a deceased chambermaid. According to the lore, she was involved in a love triangle which ended with one of her lovers taking her life in one of the guest rooms, and her former room has been turned into a storage space because the paranormal activity within the room was said to be too intense to remain open to the public. Number 2, the Ridge Home Asylum. Every state has an abandoned asylum story, and this is Colorado's. Ridge Home admitted its first patient in 1912, and from there began a history full of controversy. Many of the home's residences were admitted despite still being mentally capable, but over time their mental states declined due to their confinement. Rumors that patients were unnecessarily medicated arose, and over time parts of the building closed due to unsafe living conditions. Finally, in 1992, the doors of Ridge Home Asylum closed for good, but that doesn't change the fact that the legend that some patients were mistreated there and passed away still remains to haunt people who try to explore the abandoned building. Now coming in at number 1, Hatchet Lady of Red Rocks. Red Rocks is a staple of Colorado and is a big deal for people who live there. But what if I told you it's home to some eerie and paranormal tales? Would you still want to see your favorite band play there, even when there's something lurking in the shadows watching your every move? Yeah, probably not. One of the more popular and well-known legends surrounding Red Rocks is that of the Hatchet Lady. She wasn't always known as the Hatchet Lady though. In fact, many stories say that this woman, old Mrs. Johnson, would pull a coat over her head and carry around a hatchet in order to ward off her daughter's suitors. Apparently, she wasn't a fan of young love. She of course has tales that make her into a headless ghost, that scare off couples who are getting a little too intimate in the shadows. Other myths believe that this Hatchet Lady was a homeless woman who lived in the area, like in a nearby cave in the 1950s, and instead of going after young lovers, she'd go after children. Any young kids who ended up a little too close for their liking would be executed, and she'd hide their bodies and severed limbs around the grounds.
At a number 10 spot, we have the Devil's Chair. I mean, just by listening to the name, you already know there is zero goodness in this chair. So numerous physics and clairvoyants meet up year-round in Cassadaga, Florida, which is known as the state's spiritual hub to showcase their talents. Specifically, they meet up in Lake Helen Cemetery. As expected, this spiritual retreat is a hive of spiritual activity, but one place in particular is said to give you the shivers. The Devil's Chair of Cassadaga is a big brick chair, and it's so-called haunted because many locals think that if you sit in it late at night when no one is present, the devil will come and visit you. The chair is said to be the way for the devil to communicate with you, but the odd thing is that the devil actually enjoys a cold one, you know, a beer. It's said that if you leave an open beer on this chair, it will be empty in the morning. So just to be sure, make sure you don't take a little rest in the cemetery, because it could be a terrifying experience.
Now at number 9, the Florida Skunk Ape, also known as the Swamp Cabbage Man. The stink ape has been said to inhabit Florida, North Carolina, and Arkansas. The stories date back to the 60s and 70s, during the time of the Bigfoot mania, when the ape-like creature running on two legs was spotted in South Florida. The creature gets its name from its pungent odor, said to be a byproduct of living alongside alligators and other swamp inhabitants. There's actually an official skunk ape research headquarters in Okeechobee, where a researcher collects and investigates reports of swamp ape sightings.
At our number 8 spot, we have the grave of the Tallahassee Witch. The Old City Cemetery in Tallahassee, Florida is not your regular graveyard. In this cemetery lies a supposed witch. Yes, a real witch. The witch went by the name of Elizabeth Budd Graham, or Bessie, who was only 23 when she passed away in 1889. Her tombstone is the most expensive and the most noticeable. It has this nice stone wall with large granite vases, sculpted feathers, and a cross inside of a crown. The legend goes that Elizabeth bewitched a wealthy man into marrying her, and this is why her tombstone looks like this. The scary thing is that her tomb has a dark witch references chiseled all around the stones. A lot of the writing is written in unique poem-like fashion, but some witch references she made was doubly dead, which means that a witch can only be dead once and killed twice. Others who visit the tombstone report feelings of unease, and they often report strange individuals leaving items at the tomb. To this day, it's said that the fellow witches often visit the grave to leave gifts for Bessie.
Now at number 7, Spook Hill. In Lake Wales, there's a gravity hill that freaks out those traveling through by car. Stop your car in the right place on Spook Hill, put it in neutral, and watch as your vehicle rolls up the hill. On North Wales Drive, a sign says this: many years ago, an Indian village on Lake Wales was plagued by raids of a huge gator. The chief, a great warrior, killed the gator in a battle that created a small lake. The chief was buried on the north side. Pioneer mail riders first discovered their horses laboring downhill, thus naming it Spook Hill. When the road was paved, cars coasted uphill. Is this the gator seeking revenge, or is the chief still trying to protect his land?
At our number 6 spot, we have Robert the Doll. Now, I did a whole top 10 on this haunted doll, so go check it out in the other video if you haven't already. For those staying and don't know him, the story of Robert the Doll dates back to the early 1900s in Key West, Florida. A young boy named Eugene was given this doll and he named him Robert. Everything was good until the doll started to act super strange one night. On this night, Eugene woke up and looked at his bedside, and scary enough, the doll was facing and staring right into his eyes. Eugene's mother heard the boy scream, but as she was running to the room, she heard furniture banging all across the room. When she finally got into the room, it was completely wrangled up with Robert the Doll sitting on the edge of the bed. They then decided to lock Robert into the attic, but at night they would hear Robert's footsteps above them. Then when Eugene passed away, Robert the Doll claimed the life of a 10-year-old girl, and the girl's parents reported that the daughter would complain about hearing the doll at night and seeing it walk.
Halfway at number 5, Death Bridge. The Sunshine Skyway Bridge was a modern beauty when it opened in 1954. The bridge spans the mouth of Tampa Bay, connecting St. Petersburg on the north side with Bradenton on the south. But due to its height, it's also been an infamous spot for jumpers taking their own lives over the years. More than 200 people over the decade, according to some reports. Drivers on the bridge have also reported seeing a beautiful blonde hitchhiker on the bridge. When they pick her up, she begins to cry as the car approaches the top of the span. When the driver turns around to ask what's wrong, the woman has vanished. In 1980, the bridge was struck by a cargo ship, collapsing the central span and taking the lives of 36 people.
At our number 4 spot, we have the Pensacola Lighthouse. Legend says that a couple known for having constant fights owned the property. After a decade of living there, the lady randomly decided to take her husband's life, but she wasn't done yet. She proceeded to chop his body up in over 1,000 pieces and bury the pieces all around the lighthouse. The lighthouse's property also served as a place to treat Civil War soldiers, and many have passed away at the property as well. Visitors of the lighthouse claim to hear footsteps when no one else is there, and hearing their names being called throughout the whole building. Now the site is being controlled by the United States Coast Guard, and they even allowed ghost hunters to investigate the area in an episode. Season 5, episode 5, if you guys are wondering.
Now at number 3, Sunland Hospital. Have you ever heard of Sunland Hospital in Orlando? It served as a tuberculosis hospital and later evolved into a training center for children with special needs. The facility closed after allegations of abuse and neglect and health code violations. The main patient building was turned into a park, and reports claim that ghostly patients still hang around. Park visitors reported hearing children's laughter when no children were around, and strange lights. Some also claim swings and other playground equipment moved by themselves. Apparently, after being torn down in 1999, all of that remains of the Sunland facility is the old administration building. There was a Sunland Hospital in Tallahassee too, but the location closed in the 80s after reports of experiments and an apparent lawsuit filed claiming abuse occurred at the hospital. The state of Florida then closed all Sunland facilities in 1983.
2 spot, we have the Bloody Bucket Bridge. Yeah, sounds real. really nice. During the time of the Civil War, an African American couple moved and settled in Wauchula, Florida. The woman worked as a midwife and she was pretty content with her situation. As time passed by, the wife started to act unstable, and it was all due to the memory of her own child being stripped from her life during the Civil War. Haunted by the event, she took it on her own to suffocate babies as they were being born, and what's worse is that she told the parents it was a stillbirth. Then it said that she would take the remains of the baby to her husband, who would help grind them up and place them in a bucket. Later, she would take these buckets to the bridge and dump them into the water, hence the Bloody Bucket Bridge. People claim that if you visit the bridge on a full moon night, the water will appear red in color, looking like the blood of the baby she took.
Now taking our number 1 spot, Devil's Tree. Inside Port St. Lucie's Oak Hammock Park sits an old oak tree that locals say is evil, or more accurately, that something evil occurred there and it still haunts the land. In 1971, before the park was established, Gerard Schaefer, an ex-deputy for the Broward County Sheriff's Office, assaulted and took the lives of 2 19-year-old girls, Paulette Goodenough and Barbara Ann Wilcox, then buried them beneath an old oak tree. He was then arrested for homicide and stabbed till he passed away in prison in 1995. The girls had been missing since January 8th, 1973, but their bodies weren't discovered until 1977, when 2 fishermen noticed bones protruding from the ground. Local legends and ghost stories about the area include claims of blood-curdling screams erupting from the surrounding woods, ghostly apparitions, and camera malfunctions near the Devil's Tree. Police have responded to numerous calls claiming devil worshippers in hooded robes were performing rituals there. In 1993, the local pastor conducted an exorcism and put up a cross at the site. Numerous efforts to cut the tree down failed when chainsaws malfunctioned or axes broke.
At number 10 spot, we have Alti the sea monster. In southeastern Georgia along the 137-mile long Altamaha River, some say a gigantic sea monster is lurking in the depths, with reports dating back all the way to the 1800s. Alti, or by its original name Altamaha, is a river sea monster that was first discovered by Captain Delano of the Schooner Eagle. He described the creature being 7 feet long with a circumference the size of a barrel and a head resembling that of an alligator. Reports of the creature started to amass, with every description describing it as a 20 to 30 feet long sturgeon-like fish, but in my opinion this thing just looks like a distant relative to the Loch Ness Monster. Do you see it? Other reports claim that the creature was over 60 feet long as well. Over the years there are many sightings of Alti, and they remain consistent in their descriptions. Then more recently, a video of Jeff Warren shared an identified creature that could resemble Alti, but you guys be the judge of that one. At our number 9 spot, we have Winecoff Hotel. After its completion in 1912, it was renowned as being a fireproof building due to its steel construction. It is located in the heart of downtown Atlanta. It was grand, it was modern at the time, but for some reason the hotel only had 1 staircase, which turned out to be a huge fatal mistake later on. Then on December 7, 1946, a fire engulfed the entire hotel, which also happened to be the most deadliest hotel fire in US history, killing a total of 119 people. The fire started on the 3rd floor, which only meant that everyone from the 3rd to 15th floor had no way of escaping the building because of the 1 staircase. While some managed to jump out of their windows into the nets firemen were holding, the majority of people would be leaping to their death. The hotel has since been rebuilt, but much of the charred past remains inside of the building. At our number 8 spot, we have the Weeping Statue of Gracie. This statue is located in Bonaventure Cemetery, which was established all the way back in 1846. Although the cemetery contains many different beautiful statues, the statue of Gracie is the one that sticks out to almost all visitors. Gracie Watson was born in 1882 and grew up in the Pulaski House Hotel that her parents W.J. and Frances Watson ran. Unfortunately, when Gracie was only 7 years old, she contracted pneumonia and passed away on April 22nd, 1889. So in honor of her untimely death, a beautiful statue of her sitting was built. Nowadays, many guests leave offerings and gifts such as toys, flowers, and knives gifts for her, but when people try to steal these gifts, she will cry tears of blood. And some have even said her statue comes alive at night, with visitors seeing an empty seat on her statue. At our number 7 spot, we have the Georgia Guidestones. This is considered as America's version of Stonehenge, and you can probably see why. Not only are they both large creations with stone, but they are both shrouded in complete mystery and speculation. The Georgia Guidestones were erected in the 1980s by an anonymous man under the name of Robert C. Christian. This astronomically aligned monument is made up of a solid granite, with each of the slabs weighing around 20 tons. Written on these stones are 8 different languages, which include Arabic, Chinese, English, Hebrew, Hindi, Russian, Spanish, and Swahili. The reason it was built in the first place was to prepare humanity for a plan just in case of an upcoming apocalypse. One of the things that was noted on this was to keep humanity under the population of 500 million people, to keep us in perpetual balance with nature. With the population of 7 billion, I can see why this is kind of scary to look at. You can pause the video now if you want to see the whole entire list. However, some believe this monument has ties with the Illuminati or the New World Order, and on July 6th of the same year, the monument was completely destroyed by an explosion by an unknown individual, who could also be tied to these organizations, who knows. At number 6 spot, we have Patriots Inn. This hotel in Augusta, Georgia was built all the way back in 1816, starting off as a simple 2-story home. As the time went on, the building underwent new expansions and eventually was able to house enough people to become a hotel. The haunting story of the hotel was about a lady named Emily. She was extremely excited for a wedding and was awaiting her husband, who was arriving at the inn by horseback. Except when a knock came on her door, it wasn't her husband, but the news that he was mistaken for a soldier charged with treason and was shot to death on the spot. Her hopes of getting married and having a happy life ended immediately. She would wear her wedding gown for months and would eventually pass away brokenhearted. Now guests claim that she is still waiting for her fiancé at the hotel. They report seeing her walk up and down the staircase and pacing through the hallways in her own wedding gown. Right in the hump of our list, we have the Crybaby Bridge. I've done a Crybaby Bridge in my past videos, but I'm pretty sure there's one in every single state. Have a bridge and have a crying baby and boom, Crybaby Bridge. This bridge in Columbus, Georgia was created back in the 1800s. At the time, a poor farmer family in the area was expecting their 5th child. Knowing they couldn't afford to care for another child, the family arranged for the doctor to dispose of the baby right after birth. Now here is where it gets kind of dark. Instead of finding a humane way to deal with the baby, the doctor had more malicious intents and he took the baby to this bridge and dropped it into the water below. Now that's the story, but people say if you drive to this bridge on a cloudless night with a full moon and if you sprinkle baby powder on your car, you'll be able to hear the baby crying below the bridge. And some say that you can see baby footprints in the baby powder that you put. At number 4 spot, we have the Concord Creech Bridge. This rooftop bridge is located in the town of Smyrna. It was built in 1872 and since then some haunted deaths occurred in, outside, under, and beside this bridge. Nowhere is safe. It's said that the waterheads haunt the forest and below the bridge. They are the children who were used for human experimentation and left to pass away by this bridge. Many other children were taken here only to meet their end as well. Now it's said that if you park on the bridge, turn off your car lights, and leave a Snickers bar on your car, you'll hear quiet footsteps approaching your car, and soon after the Snicker bars will be removed from the car. All the way at a number 3 spot, we have the statue of Corinne Lawton. Aside from the weeping statue of Gracie, the Bonaventure Cemetery also has the famous statue of Corinne Elliott Lawton. She was the daughter of the well-to-do brigade general in the Civil War, Alexander Robert Lawton. Legend goes that she wanted to marry someone who was in a lower social class, so because of this the father denied it and forced her to marry one of the most wealthiest men in all of Savannah. When she met him, she told the father she couldn't do it, but the wedding was still forced. On the day of the wedding, she was angry and heartbroken and took herself to the banks of the river and proceeded to drown herself. The odd thing about her statue is that it's facing away from her family's tomb, which many people say is a way to show that she went against her family's will even after death. Many paranormal investigators have attempted to speak to Corinne over the years with some compelling evidence, so go search it up on YouTube if you want. At our number 2 spot, we have Lake Lanier. Couldn't mention Georgia without Lake Lanier because most of the people in the state know everything there needs to know about this infamous lake and the town that surrounds it. Some people come to this lake mostly to have a good time, but others in Georgia choose to stay far away from this body of water because this is where many drownings and boat accidents occur. And since its creation back in 1956, the lake has claimed the lives of over 700 people, which just makes this lake a cemetery in my opinion. Many blame the ancestral ghosts in the area. This is because many forget that the town around the lake was named Oscarville, which was home to over 1,000 African Americans who wanted to escape racial inequality. However, in 1912, a young white woman named May Crow was found dead in the woods, and many blamed it on these 2 young black men. This caused an enraged mob to drive the whole black community out of the town, with houses burning down and some people passing away. Now this could explain all the restless ghosts in the area. This was a terrible event in US history and it's no surprise this place is haunted. At number 1 spot, we have the old governor's mansion. Located in Milledgeville, this estate was built in 1840 after a fire burned down the original Capitol building in 1931. And more famously, the President of the Confederate States of America, Jefferson Davis, was laid to state there, which is the tradition in which the body of a deceased official is placed in a state building. Now over the years, visitors report smelling burnt cigars, keys jingling when no one's around, broken glass, a woman's screams, and books falling from the 3rd floor. When paranormal investigators checked out the place, they claimed the most activity was in the mansion's library, which is the same place where many guests asked the workers if something happened in the library in the past, because when they walked through it, they claimed to sense a presence watching them.
Starting out this countdown at number 10, Spirit Lake origins. Spirit Lake's name is said to be no mystery to those who live in Idaho. The story goes that years ago, a young Native American woman began a relationship with a brave man from a rival tribe. Unable to wed but determined to preserve their doomed love, the two tied their wrists together in symbolic marriage and jumped from a cliff into the lake where others tend to go to take their lives. It's said that on the moonlit nights you can see their shadowy spirits drifting across the lake in a phantom canoe, while mournful sounds fill the air as the Indian lovers seek release from their watery grave. Now here at number 9, Coyote and the Seven Devils. The Seven Devils form a portion of the Idaho-Oregon border, as well as line the most treasured river canyon called Hell's Canyon. The Nez Perce in particular had origin stories for nearly every feature of Idaho's diverse landscape, and the story of the Seven Devils is a unique one. Many years ago, there were 7 child-eating giant brothers who lived on the horizon. The people were terrified of these giants. They sent word to Coyote to help them defeat the giants and save their children. Coyote knew he couldn't battle 7 giants at once, so he dug massive holes in the earth and filled them with boiling liquid. As the giants were traveling east to snatch more children, they tripped into the holes and were trapped. Coyote was then able to transform the giants into stone, and he opened up a canyon at their feet to keep them from ever reaching the villages again. Coming in at number 8, Idaho doesn't exist. According to dozens of web pages which have genuinely called into question the very existence of Idaho as a physical location, the gem state simply doesn't exist, people say. People say it's down to 3 premises. Do you know anybody from Idaho? Have you ever been to Idaho? Do you know anyone who's ever been to Idaho? For most, the answer is no. Therefore, that's why people say Idaho doesn't exist. In fact, the general consensus is that Idaho was put on the map because cartographers needed a barrier to separate Utah from Canada and protect Montana from Washington, or vice versa. One explanation is that Idaho is a government-operated mind control vacuum. Another theory is that Idaho exists, but only as a state of mind. The whole debacle stirs up an abundance of very real philosophical arguments, but according to conspiracy logic, if you feel like you're living in Idaho right now, odds are it is simply the result of other conspiracies at work. Now personally, I don't believe this one, but there are some people who really full-heartedly believe it. Here at number 7, Charlie. The legend of Charlie the lake monster was first recorded in the early 1920s when railroad workers in McCall saw something unexplainable. In McCall, locals will tell you the tale of this creature. Charlie has been known as Slimy Slim and the Twilight Dragon of Payette Lake. Over the years, this serpent-like creature with a dragon head has made many appearances. Most think it's a log before it rises up to reveal its head. The last documented sighting came in 2002, but in 1954, the Payette Lake Star newspaper held a contest challenging readers to come up with a name for this elusive creature. The winner was Leigh Isle Henneferturi of Springfield, who came up with the name Charlie. Charlie continued to be spotted over the years, but it has been seen less and less frequently. It is reported to be between 10 and 50 feet long, brownish green, having a shell, and travels in serpent-like waves, rising and falling out of the water. But this gentle beast garners nothing but love from locals, who can't seem to recall an incident when Charlie attacked any of the lakeside city's residents. Very much like the Loch Ness Monster, except the Loch Ness Monster doesn't get as much love, and it seems like every place has its own version of a monster in a body of water. Number 6, Idaho is purposely drugging its residences. In 1947, it's said that Lewiston began adding fluoride into its water, as did the vast majority of United States cities, a practice which still exists today. Many suspected, however, that the addition of fluoride, which is approved as an easy way to cut down on widespread tooth decay, was in fact a large-scale attempt to underhandedly medicate Idaho's citizens, as well as a means of covering up the drastic lack of dental care provided for the state's working people who were poor. The dramatic decrease in childhood cavity levels recorded by 1950 supported the practice as a whole, but to this day, fluoride is still majorly opposed for a variety of reasons, including links to cancer and bone loss. Halfway at number 5, Lake Pend. This deep ocean-like lake in northern Idaho is said to be the perfect place for a monstrous beast to reside. It is said to be large, gray, and prehistoric in shape and size. Locals claim he is an unknown remnant of the Jurassic era that has managed to survive extinction, against all odds. Up until this point, the creature has remained a peaceful part of local lore, although many say that sightings of the sea creature were merely glimpses of Naval Training Station's top-secret submarine and technological testing. Coming in at number 4, Civic Theater. Before this building housed the Lewiston Civic Theater, it was a Methodist church built in 1904. In 1972, it became a theater, and in 1982, 2 women and 1 man all mysteriously disappeared from the theater on the same night. Both women were found unfortunately deceased off of the property 2 years later, suspected to be victims of a homicide. The man, however, was never found, and his mystery remains unsolved. Whether or not these 3 people haunt the building, there have been numerous sightings of other ghosts in the theater. Actors and theatergoers have seen apparitions of a red-haired man, a spectacled presence in the mailroom, and an elderly gentleman in the doorway. A ghost of a director has been seen in the balcony, and apparently a bride weaves herself through the seats. Here at number 3, Massacre Rocks Water Babies. This one comes from Pocatello, where you can hear the crying of babies late at night if you sit by the river alone in the dark. Many believe that it's the sound of babies that mothers were forced to take the lives of during a famine rather than watch them starve till they passed away. Some think that these babies grew gills and learned to survive. Depending on the story you hear, a water baby is said to be a spirit or monster traditionally seen as a Native American bred urban legend of small childlike creatures living in the waters of reservations around the western United States. It is rumored that they are tricksters whose main goal is to take the lives of others. Coming in at number 2, the Murder House. The Murder House of Boys was the site of the vicious passing of Preston Murr more than 30 years ago. After an argument broke out in the basement of the house between Murr and 2 men, Murr was shot and then hacked into pieces that were dumped 100 miles away from Brownlee Reservoir. His body parts surfaced and led investigators back to the house, which is allegedly still haunted today. Many former residents and visitors of the house have said that the basement has a very creepy feeling. Even footsteps from an invisible person have been heard. There are also legends about the house that say bloodstains appear and then disappear, and a woman in old-fashioned clothing has been seen looking out the window.
Now the rumor is that this 21-year-old man will forever haunt this home, and even non-believers believe it's created an urban legend.
Living there, I really don't feel that I was never afraid or felt that it was haunted, but there are so many stories. I mean, everybody's convinced that it is.
Now here at our number 1 spot, the Phantom Jogger of Canyon Hill. At Cadwell's Canyon Hill Cemetery, it's said that the ghosts don't like when you stare at their graves late at night. According to the legend, if you park between the 2 trees across the street from the entrance at midnight, you will see something quite terrifying. Make sure to turn your lights off though, so you can see the legless jogger when she knocks on your window. After you've completely freaked out and almost totally lost your mind, she leaves just as quickly as she came. Someone has said that they parked in this spot to investigate, but they did it at noon, so it wasn't very dark. They said they didn't see any ghosts, but that it was still very creepy.
At a number 10 spot, we have the 7 Gates to Hell. In the rural town of Collinsville, Illinois, they have what is known as the 7 Gates to Hell, which follows this twisting and turning back roads. The gates were formed by these old trestle bridges built back in the early 1800s, passing over the roadways that allowed trains to go over the area. Many stories, none of them good, come from these gates, ranging from satanic rituals to homicides to even paranormal activity. Legend says that there are 2 ways to experience the gates to hell. The first is that you might drive through each of the gates from order 1 through 7. If you want to open the portal to hell, you need to pass through the 7th gate at midnight, where you will be met with hellhounds that will drag you into hell. The second way is that you drive in reverse through the gates, starting from 7 all the way down to number 1. It's said that if you do this and look at your rear view mirror, you will see a tear in reality and see hell firsthand. At a number 9 spot, we have Hull House Devil Baby. In 1889, the Hull House was founded by Jane Addams and Ellen Gates Starr. This is also the first settlement house in all of Chicago. It didn't take long until many people showed up to the house and praised it to a point where people began naming it the best settlement house in all of America. The structure stands to this day, but this house has a lesser known story of a devil baby. In 1913, one night a baby was left abandoned at the steps of the Hull House. It was possibly a severely deformed baby. Jane Addams would take the baby in as she basically had no other choice, but in the following weeks mass hysteria would consume the house fairly quickly. This was because word broke out of this baby looking as if it was devil spawn. People came in the thousands and wanted to catch a glimpse of this devil baby. Unfortunately, shortly after, the baby would pass away, but it is said that if you look up at the window where the baby had passed away, you can see the face of a devil looking back right at you. At number 8 spot, we have Homie the Clown. In Illinois during the 1990s, there was a clown going by the name of Homie who was spotted going through the streets to lure children into a sketchy van. If you've seen the free candy van meme, this is the unofficial origin story. His name originated from a beloved clown character in the early 90s sketch comedy show named In Living Color, who would be this ex-convict who would carry a sock for rebellious children. Except for this clown, children would not get a sock for punishment, but would get something way more sinister, way more brutal. Eventually the police would be involved, but would be very skeptical about a killer kidnapping clown. Homie the clown would eventually fizzle out of existence and may still be out there in his van awaiting unsuspecting children. At number 7 spot, we have the Murfreesboro Mud Monster. In 1973, a young couple went on a romantic late night drive in the town of Murfreesboro, Illinois. Only after a few minutes of driving, they decided to park near a river when all of a sudden, they heard a shrieking sound that could only be described as an eagle shrieking into a microphone. They soon scanned the area and heard yet another loud screech. They looked in the direction where it came from and noticed a bush that was shaking. They then saw the mud monster and described it as a 7-foot tall being, thick fur, and a footprint closely resembled that of Bigfoot. This monster soon kept terrorizing the town for weeks, then out of the blue, it disappeared, leaving the town in peace all of a sudden. At number 6 spot, we have the Moon Point Cemetery. Just south of Streator in Livingston County lies this old graveyard named Moon Point Cemetery. It got its name from Jacob Moon, who, along with his daughter and 3 sons, was the first to settle that area. After years of war and other fatal tragedies, this place has been haunted by the ghosts of its past. One of these ghosts include the ghost of a hatchet lady. Legend has it she often visited the cemetery to watch over her son's grave after he passed away during the Civil War. Eventually she would pass away too, but immediately after, her ghost took up the vigil wielding a hatchet. She has been heard yelling or even whispering at visitors to get out of the area, and on a full moon night she is seen throwing hatchets around the cemetery. Other ghosts stuck inside the cemetery include a ghost boy, strange dancing orbs, and the sound of a sarcophagus lid opening. It doesn't help the fact that vandalism is happening at the cemetery, so it's basically confirmed that the spirits are unrested within this place. In the hump of our list, we have ghost elephants. On June 22nd, 1918, a train was heading to Indiana for a performance before they were struck head on with another train that ignored all sorts of warnings. The crash alone was bad, causing many lives to be lost, but it wasn't until a fire broke out as a result of the crash where many more lives were claimed. An estimated total of 85 circus performers lost their lives, making it the second worst circus accident in all of history. The bodies were buried at a nearby cemetery named Woodland Cemetery, and while many bodies were unrecognizable due to the charred remains, they were buried in mass graves with unknown man or unknown woman marked on the graves. At night, visitors of the cemetery claimed to see the apparition of an elephant and the sounds of it before it disappears into the darkness. I mean, just imagine strolling through the cemetery and you encounter a 4-ton, 11 feet tall beast right in front of you. That's probably the most terrifying sight of all. At number 4 spot, we have Lover's Leap. Illinois' Pierre Marquette State Park spans an area of about 8,000 acres, and this includes a cliff area known as Lover's Leap. This cliff overlooks both the Illinois and Mississippi rivers, and if I didn't tell you about this next story, I bet you would have wanted to catch the view, but let me change your mind real quick. The legend goes that an Indian brave and a maiden of another tribe fell in love, despite the fact that both of their tribes absolutely despise one another. The tribes have set up so many walls that they even use starvation as a tactic of war. Because of this divide, the two are forced to stay away from one another, and the chiefs of each tribe forbid them from marrying one another. No exceptions. So just like Romeo and Juliet, the two met up one last time at Lover's Leap and proceeded to jump off the cliff together because they thought if we can't have each other, then no one can. Now couples who go near this cliff have the sudden urge to jump off with their partner even if they come to the area completely happy with no personal issues. All the way at a number 3 spot, we have the Thunderbirds. This legend all started back in 1977 when Ruth Lowe from Lansdale, Illinois was drawn outside by a loud noise coming from her backyard. When she looked, she noticed the area was in complete darkness with something large approaching the ground. Before she could understand what's happening, a massive bird lifted her child a full 2 feet above the ground before letting go and vanishing out of the air. According to Ruth, it was black in color with a white ring around its neck, with wings and a tail that were at least 10 feet long. Basically the Mothman, but on steroids. At a number 2 spot, we have the ghost lady of Kennedy Hill Road. In 1980 on Kennedy Hill Road, people reported seeing a woman in a dress walking around before vanishing into the dark. There are numerous sightings of this person or ghost, but no one could really explain what they saw. Some thought it was the ghost of a woman buried nearby, or some had assumed it was a mentally disabled person who had run away from their home. As more sightings were reported, more details were being released on what the ghost was. One report claimed that the ghost lady was actually a man wearing his late girlfriend's dress, but after this report was made, the ghost was never seen or heard from again. Except now she is said to be back, with new reports claiming that the ghost is still walking in the road, with descriptions of her being very tall, slender, and having long blonde hair. At a number 1 spot with the Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. This one could very well be the most haunted cemetery in America, with hundreds of reports of paranormal experience, in which many of them are well documented and very credible. Just 25 miles outside of Chicago lies the Bachelor Grove's Woods, and around 1840 the cemetery was only a 1-acre plot of land with a total of 82 graves. Eventually the place was abandoned due to the limited space, but this is when it turned from an innocent graveyard to one of the most terrifying ones. After years of neglect and vandalism, the cemetery started to have more and more hauntings and paranormal activity. When visitors access the cemetery from coming through the woods, they often report seeing the apparition of a dog, a horse, a lady in white, and balls of glowing lights. The most famous grave in this cemetery is marked as the infant daughter. It is usually surrounded by these flowers and toys from those who leave their condolences on the young person. Remember that lady in white I just mentioned? Well, it said that she is the mother of this infant, and then she roams the cemetery still looking for her daughter, as no name ever presented itself on the tombstone.